So, I might have gone on a Minecraft binge. Anyhow, recently I had the chance to visit Armidale, a small-ish city in the New South Wales Tablelands, about a bee's dick away from the New South Wales-Queensland border. Aside from having one of the highest airports in the state, sitting about 1,000 metres above sea level, it's also home to a war memorial. Amongst these is a plaque for HMAS Armidale, a corvette lost in the Pacific theatre during the Second World War. Listed with the plaque is Ordinary Seaman Edward Teddy Sheehan, amongst one of the 100 Australian and Dutch service members who were killed with the loss of the vessel. It took almost 80 years, but Teddy Sheehan was posthumously awarded the Victoria Cross, the Commonwealth's highest award for individual gallantry, which currently makes him the only member of the Royal Australian Navy to earn the award. Additionally, the Collins-class submarine, HMAS Sheehan, is named after him, which also makes him the only enlisted sailor in Australian history to have a ship named after him. Having gone to see the memorial myself, I got a hit of inspiration. Using my absolute shit tier creativity, why don't I go try to make HMAS Armidale in my current ATM10 world? Of course, that comes with a few caveats, the main one being just where to put a 60 metre long, 10 metre wide vessel. If we look at the map, this is my local topography. I can't expand to the west because I need that space for farming. I can't expand to the north since it's landlocked, and it's where most of my power infrastructure lies. Just a shit ton of wind turbines packed way too tight together. The southwest is out of the question, because bluntly I don't want to deal with these stupid fucking alum trees, and the east is out because that area is needed for machinery and the like. That does, however, leave this quaint chunk of space straight to the south. It's connected to the river, the terrain is relatively easy to clear, and it's large enough to house smaller vessels. Now, I could clear this space out using hand tools, but why do that when I have a machine that could clear out the required space automatically? After grabbing my quarrying machine, I needed to mark out the required space. HMAS Armidale was a Bathurst-class corvette, 57 metres in length from bow to stern, 9.5 metres wide, and drafting 2.5 metres underneath the waterline. Rounding out for ease of construction, since Minecraft doesn't do half blocks on a horizontal axis, plus some space for the dry dock she'll be sitting in, we're looking at a 60-ish metre long, 10 metre wide, 5 metre deep pit. So, after marking out the dimensions, I plugged the quarry card into the builder and the pit for the dry dock was open. There was still work to be done, of course, since having so many different materials in every direction looked ugly as fuck and was just out of place, so I needed something to surface the dry dock with. Originally I wanted to use granite, but I didn't have enough of it on hand, so instead I settled for a modded block, eroded cobblestone. Placing this all by hand was going to play havoc on my tendons, but luckily, the All the Mods 10 mod pack includes a building gadget. After accidentally suffocating a pig, the walls of the dry dock were complete. As it turned out though, my calculations were a little off, because the area immediately surrounding the dry dock looked goofy as all hell. Given that I had indestructible super fast tools, I ended up getting to work carving out some space around the dry dock by hand. 10 minutes later, and I had cleared some space so it looked slightly less shitty. With that out of the way, next I got around to surfacing the dry dock. I ran out of cobblestone, so I finished the floor after going back for a fresh inventory of the stuff. And for good measure, I also added a slope to the wall to make it look less two-dimensional. Of course, the dry dock would need a gate to allow it access to the river, even if such an appearance is strictly aesthetic in this game. Given that I had Depth Strider 4 in my boots, or something like that, this proved to be a slightly annoying task with how careful I had to be with my movements, but eventually the job was done. For the gate/barrier itself, I used polished granite for the outline and deep slate bricks for the inset. Now, it gets dark as sin inside the dry dock overnight, so I added some lighting to alleviate the issue. The block of choice being Withering Grave Glowstone, which is a really odd sounding name, but I thought it looked cool and I had some of it sitting around from other projects. Now the dry dock had lights. With the absolute bare minimum in infrastructure done, now I had to work on the ship itself, and this is where things get a little tricky. In the months leading up to her sinking, Armidale can be seen with some kind of paint scheme on a hull. This particular image was taken in September 1942. However, I wasn't able to find any other references to this scheme beyond that single image, And as a matter of fact, according to an extensive write-up on the Bathurst class, written by John Henshaw, which I'll link in the description, there was little to no standardization done for camouflage for the class in general. Given that I have no references or color palette therefore to work off, I'm just ignoring any sense of camo for this construction. With that out of the way, materials. For the main hull itself, I am just using raw, plain, vanilla Minecraft stone. After a little bit of deliberation, I ended up using redwood planks to hold below the waterline, whilst the waterline itself is made from polished blackstone. Construction began with the blackstone, marking out the general shape of the hull. This took a little bit of finagling and corrections over time as I tried to better match the contours of the hull, and I'm still not sure I like the end result. This will be a recurring theme as I go on with the ship. Once the waterline was marked out, I placed a layer of stone on top of it and started forming the stern and the midship sections of the hull above the waterline, given that this would be easier than forming the bow. After that came the painful part of the build, forming the bow. Ultimately, this was a doomed prospect the moment I elected to make the hull 6 blocks tall on such a short ship. Why is it that tall? So I could fit some room to walk in between the main hull and the forecastle. Anyway, progress continued, and yeah, the 10th one came out shockingly terrible, even by my standards. So much so that I tore out the hull and went for a more conventional ramp upwards. With that clusterfuck out of the way for the time being, my efforts then travelled aft, and before long, the main hull was done. Of course, there was a bunch of dead space below the waterline, so my efforts now shifted to the underwater hull. And as it turned out, this was a much easier effort, mostly because the hull below the waterline was only 3 blocks high. The hull done, next came the rudder, which was made simply from redwood planks and stairs. Then the propellers. The Bathurst class were fitted with 2 shafts, meaning 2 propellers. I ended up making the shafts out of that glowstone material I had used for the floor of the dry dock, while the props themselves came to be made from gold blocks. With the underwater section of the Armidale done, next came the main decks. I ended up settling on using ebony planks, since I had a shit ton of it from cutting down trees by the dry dock. I set up the forecastle and foredeck, and time skipped to 2 weeks later since I was busy with life, to finish placing the main deck. With all the broad touches down, now began the rather convoluted process of detailing, and this is where the build started to get interesting. For reference, the images I'm using to reflect the build come from a model kit for HMAS Castlemaine and not HMAS Armidale. That said, they're both Bathurst class corvettes, and the general details are roughly the same. Anyhow, I elected to build the ship up from stern first, starting with the winch and crane assemblies on the fantail. After that came the aft mast, the aftmost 20mm anti-aircraft mount, and then whatever this assembly is highlighted now. Having done that, I now shifted to the bow, starting with the wavebreaker shield wing ahead of the mount for the 4-inch main gun, before laying down the point on which the main gun would actually sit. The main superstructure and bridge then followed, and rather helpfully, the superstructure on the Bathurst class is box-shaped. The main bridge was shaped, after which came the bridge wings inside the superstructure. I made a start on the main mast, but did the funnel stack before finishing the former. At this point, I realised I had to knock down the bridge wing walls to fit the AA guns each side, so after doing that, Armidale now had most of a light anti-aircraft suit. Then from there, I moved on to the boat deck, after the bridge and in line with the funnel. Admittedly, this was far from my best work, and fairly close to my worst, so while I made 2 racks, only the port side rack actually had a boat on it. So, with the singular boat in place, my attention once again shifted to the bow of the vessel, putting some railings in place over the sides of the bow before actually finishing the 4-inch main gun. And with the main gun having been finished, she was done. Okay, bye.